Good morning and welcome to the Liverpool Daily News. I'm James Martin and today I'm joined by Ben Bocsak. There's plenty to talk about, some good, some less good. We'll be touching on the Brighton game, of course, and then some transfer news to bring you as well. We'll get to that all in good time, but as good a place to start as any is the comments. Please, by all means, leave comments throughout this video. We'll get to as many as we can. We love hearing from you. And Bruce, we've already heard from this morning, Ben. He says, we all love Klopp, but at what point do we start questioning him? We've seen some bizarre substitutions in recent games. I'm aware we're one good performance from this question being ridiculous. That's always the case, isn't it? But what do you make of Klopp's substitutions this season, and I suppose particularly in that Brighton game?
I don't think there was anything wrong with his substitutions. I think all of them kind of made sense at the time. Tsimikas, obviously, he has to keep in mind that there is going to be a lot of games coming up for Liverpool, and he can't afford to keep his players on for 90 minutes. And even though Tsimikas was playing well, I think it was smart and sensible to sort of take him off because Liverpool have a crucial game midweek as well. And James Milner in the past has been pretty competent on the left, and I think he struggled on the right, but on the left I don't think he's necessarily been as bad. And let's be honest, like, people will blame Milner because it was his man that scored the third Brighton goal, but he had to get past Trent Alexander-Arnold and Matip and Van Dijk for as well to get to Trossard. So I don't think it was necessarily just Milner entirely at fault. It was the whole defensive line sort of not functioning properly.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, but I suppose there are other questions you could ask. I mean, you're right to raise the congested schedule. There's only so much Klopp can do when he has to manage not just this game, but the next 13 games, including, like you say, massive game midweek. But I suppose some eyebrows might have been raised as well by the fact that, potentially record signing Darwin Núñez got about 2 minutes to change the game. That seemed a little bit odd as well, didn't it?
Yeah, that was slightly strange, but I think as well with Núñez, obviously he'd been travelling with the Uruguayan squad, and I'm pretty sure Klopp was given advice by the medical staff not to play him for as long. So I'm sure that was sort of keeping in mind with the rotation and with the sort of games ahead that he was given such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think there's probably things behind the scenes we weren't privy to. I mean, there were the word out of the club was that 3 players would be assessed going into it. Núñez was among them, Diaz was among them, and of course we only saw Diaz in that second half as well. So probably just a fitness issue, maybe nothing more than that. But I mean, what did you make of the game as a whole? Substitutions aside, it's another game where the defenses look shaky, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think all in all, I think Liverpool, there's a lot of positives from that game as well, strangely, for Liverpool in terms of creating chances and just, I feel like they had, for about 85 minutes, Liverpool had control of the game. It's just that 5 minutes, when Brighton countered and every time they went forward, there was always problems. And I think it just feels like sometimes there's a lack of concentration in the team. And I don't know if that's because of mental fatigue, if the players are still sort of trying to recover from last season and all the toils of that long and hard fought season. I don't know what the issue is, but it just feels like there's a tiny moment of the game when Liverpool's players lose focus, and that's when the opposition capitalizes and takes advantage and hurts Liverpool. And that's how it felt like, against Brighton on Saturday. And I think the only exception to that rule was Napoli, when Liverpool's players looked switched off for 90 minutes. But apart from that, I think the rest of the games, that's how it felt like.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Like it's hard to remain balanced when we watch Liverpool, finish 18 points clear of third last season, go deep in the Champions League, and then suddenly just that looks so distant. So, you see some of the comments saying, I'm giving Klopp until the World Cup, and if he can't sort it by then I want a new manager, says Mark. That seems a bit extreme. I assume you wouldn't agree with that, Ben. Another comment we have is, should Gomez get a chance at right back? I mean, the Trent agenda has been a major part of the season so far, and a lot of people are suggesting something like that could be the fix. I mean, what are you saying, Ben? Are you saying Klopp out? Are you saying Alexander out? Are you saying neither of the above?
Neither of the above. I think Liverpool do need to find some changes, but look, this is a team that won the league, won the Champions League, obviously came very close to winning everything last season. I don't think it's necessarily the personnel that needs changing. I think it's just something in the mentality of the players. I mean, Van Dijk was making mistakes against Brighton, but then he was putting in world-class performances for the Netherlands during the international break. And it's the same with, the likes of Salah, who got a hat-trick for Egypt. It's clear that these players are still quality players. It's, for some reason, we don't really know. It's not seemed to be clicking together at the moment in a Liverpool shirt, but that doesn't mean that it won't start to click together again. I mean, as the common saying goes, form is temporary and class is permanent, and I think we should sort of consider that about the Liverpool team, and that's how we should think about it. I think they're just going through a dip, and sooner or later they will find their feet.
Yeah. Okay. So that puts you more in the camp of this comment. Everyone needs to calm down. They didn't have much of a break and not a full pre-season. Hopefully that is the more accurate assessment. Time will tell. But I mean, you mentioned Mohamed Salah away with the Egypt there, so that's as good a segue as any into the transfer news that we have to bring you, and that is that Liverpool have been linked with Ibrahim Adel of the Egyptian national team. Ben, I know you wrote a piece on him recently, so I'll throw that over to you. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, I remember watching him at the Olympics actually, and he came on a few times. Looked really bright and promising. Back then, he was a sort of young player from Egypt, and just looking at his data and his profile and his performances, I think two things stand out for me. One, he's extremely versatile. He's played virtually everywhere across the front three and even as a attacking midfielder, which bodes well for Liverpool because it means he can play in various roles, and he could sort of be the Minamino type of player in that Liverpool squad. Obviously, Liverpool lost Minamino this summer and haven't really replaced him. And the other thing is his defensive work rate. He is very prolific when it comes to tracking back and putting in his defensive duties. I think he averaged over 7 defensive duels last season, which is really high for an attacking player. So those things are obviously stuff that Klopp likes. He likes his players to be versatile. He likes that sort of profile where they can kind of shift and go anywhere across the front three. And he also likes players who put in the work and who put a good defensive shift in as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one of the problems this season has been that the pressing from the front has not quite been clicking. That's why so many of these balls have been able to come through and find the gap where Trent arguably should be. But if the press worked, then it wouldn't be a problem. That's why it hasn't been a problem in years gone by. So a pressing forward maybe somewhat higher up the agenda than we might have thought it would have been at the start of the season. Salah is said to be keen on Adel as well. Could that be a factor? I mean, we've seen Liverpool have kind of the groups of players before. We have the kind of Brazilian clique at the moment, don't we? And then the homegrown lads, they do tend to have these kind of groups within the squad. Do you reckon there could be anything in that?
I'm sure from Adel's point of view, it would be great to come to Liverpool and work with Mohamed Salah. I don't know if Salah feels that lonely in the Liverpool squad. He's obviously been here for several years now, and he hasn't really felt the need to have a clique. So I don't know if there is anything in that. I think it's interesting. I think it would be good for Salah to sort of have someone from his culture, from his country. Obviously, it's always nice to have that when you're away from the environment you call your home. But other than that, I think in terms of Salah's future, Liverpool have tied him down to a long-term contract now, so maybe they don't necessarily have to think about keeping him that happy anyway.
Yeah, and I suppose you do hear all these stories, don't you, about clubs who missed out on players who went on to be brilliant, even though a player or a manager sort of recommended them to him. I mean, with Haaland at the moment, supposedly Solskjaer told United to sign him, and they said no. So, yeah, maybe Liverpool are wary of or should be wary of something like that if Salah is recommending him to them. But if Liverpool don't sign Adele, then never mind. They'll find someone like him. So I think that will pretty much do us. Thanks very much for everyone who commented. Thanks for getting involved. Really interesting chat as ever. Be sure to keep up with the Liverpool.com content over on the site for the rest of the day and Blood Red on YouTube. And we'll be back tomorrow with more transfer rumours, potentially. Whatever's going on in the world of Liverpool, we'll bring it to you. So be sure to tune in. Thanks very much.